I think it was Mark Twain that said there were two most important days in your life, the day that you were born and the day you found out why you were born. Have any of you heard of Mars One? Anybody heard of Mars One? A couple of you heard of Mars One? Mars One is a not-for-profit foundation with the goal of establishing a permanent human settlement on Mars. To prepare for this settlement, the first unmanned mission is scheduled to depart in 2020. Crews will depart for their one-way journey to Mars starting in 2026. Subsequent crews will depart every 26 months, and the initial crew, after the initial crew has left for Mars. Mars One is a global initiative to make this everyone's mission to Mars, including yours. So I understand that to date they've received over 200,000 applications for people that want to go and live on Mars. Now, did you get the point about it being a one-way journey? They have the technology to get you there. They don't have any technology to get you back. So they want to set up a settlement on Mars, and this has been going on for quite some time. This is not quite a few years, maybe 5-10 years. And I understand that they have narrowed it down. I think they have 100 people now that they have initially vetted out, and they have to go through 10 years of training before they decide who the first team will be, and then subsequently by that they will establish further teams. What interests me about that is the fact that there are so many people that would be willing to do that. And I think the reason is because there's this desperate need in us to feel like our life has some significance. That there's something about us that's important, that we come here and live on this world not just to exist, but to contribute, to leave here saying, yeah, my life meant something. I think it was early in around 2000, Carl Roston was in Cambodia for a conference and heard about this 12-year-old girl who had been sold into sex slavery called NU. And all of you know the story, or most of you know the story of NU and the foundation that's called Remember NU, and that Patton Forrest and us that we all have been a part of in Thailand. And that's now spread all over the world. And that began with Carl sitting in this conference and feeling God tug on his heart and say, I have something bigger for you than selling insurance. I have something to make your life have some meaning, some significance. And from that spawned this huge worldwide organization that is impacting our planet to rescue children from the slave industry. And there is in all of us the sense that we want to have something of significance about our life. And that's important. And so we are sort of on this journey from last week and for the next few weeks to talk about how we discover what that is. And last week we discovered a word. Anybody remember what the word was? Hineni. Very good. Some of you remembered Hineni. And Hineni is sort of a complex word. It has this sense of being present. A few weeks ago, Bowie was spending the night at her house. And in the middle of the night, I heard her calling, Grandpa, Grandpa. And I went up there and I said, Hineni. That's not really what I said, but that's what I illustrated. Here I am. I'm here. I'm available. I'm ready. And she'd had a bad dream, and so she needed the presence of Grandpa to comfort her and to tend to her needs. That is the attitude of Hineni. It's the attitude of being willing, to being available. It's the same attitude that little Samuel had in the temple when he said, Here, my Lord. Here am I. And it's the same attitude that you find in the prophets in Isaiah. And Isaiah said, Here I am, Lord, send me. It's the same attitude that Paul said on the road to Damascus when he felt a little light and he said, Jesus, here am I. Here am I. So in order to find God's purpose in your life, you have to have that sense of being available. You have to have that sense of tending to what's happening in your world around you and to be sensitive that somewhere around you, God is going to present an idea, a vision, a significance for you. And if you're not available, if you're not tending to that, it could simply go right by you. You'd never actually see it was there. So that's the first important part. The second important part is sort of having a sense of purpose, a sense of vision, a sense of direction. About 25 years ago, or whatever it was, when I was first pastoring here, there was this sort of a movement to figure out what your vision and purpose statement was for your church. and everybody was doing it. I don't know, maybe they still do it, but you don't hear quite so much about it. But we had this guy come from the district in, and he spent a day with us going around, around the circle of the room and working through different things, different assignments, in order to figure out what our vision statement was, what our purpose was. And we came up with 3 little phrases. Anybody remember what they were? 3 words: seeking, serving, proclaiming. That was our sort of motto, and it built from that. But the truth of the matter is that we need to understand not only what our purpose is, but first of all, what God's purpose is. What is God's vision for this planet? What is God's vision for us, and how do we become a part of that? Because it's really all about Him and what He wants to do. And the Bible says that God is a rescuer. He's a redeemer. He is in the interest of redeeming this planet. He's in the interest of redeeming people. And He invites us to participate in that. It's important that in this journey that we're going the right direction, that we are sort of in alignment with God in order to have a sense as to what we're supposed to be doing. We quoted the Lord's Prayer earlier this day, and there's a phrase in here that's really interesting to me. It says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." Now, I may be stretching things a little bit, but it seems to me that what Jesus is saying here is that what we are trying to do is to bring heaven in alignment with what eternity is going to look like. That we want to bring the earth back into alignment with the way that was created. That we want to bring people and everything about this creation back into that similar place. And there's a lot of actually scriptures about redemption throughout the Bible, and there's a lot about redemption of the planet. If you go back to the very beginning in the book of Genesis, it says that the reason that created mankind is, he said, make man in our own image so that he may rule over the fish, the sea, over the birds of the sky, over the landscape. And the point and purpose of our doing that is to control, to maintain, to care for them. It isn't just to lord it over them. And then it also says in verse 15, the Lord took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and to take care of it. So we are an active participant in this redemption process. And if you sort of have that in mind and start looking through the scriptures, there's lots of verses that talk about God's heart, God's passion for His creation. So sometimes redemption has to do with creation. There's an interesting verse in Deuteronomy that says, it's not there. If you come across a bird's nest beside the road, either on a tree or on the ground, and the mother is sitting on the young or the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. You may take the young, but be sure to let the mother go so that it may go well with you and you may have a long life. That's just a fascinating thing that there again and again God talks about our relationship with His creation and how that's so important and that we have a role, we have a significance in that redemption. And throughout the Psalms, there's this presence of how important creation is and how creation expresses who God is and how the beauty of creation expresses who God is. And so there is this facet of God's redemption that involves all of creation. And sometimes our vision, what God puts us here, is participating in that. I was watching a documentary this week on a man whose name is, if I could pronounce it here, Sebastião Salgado. And Sebastião Salgado is a world-famous photojournalist. And he has produced many, many books about photojournalism and photography. And if you're into that, you definitely need to pursue and look at some of his work. And largely, he spent most of his life going into areas of social unrest. And he went to places like Darfur and Ethiopia and Sudan where there's incredible turmoil, and he has pictures of people in intense pain and intense agony and the suffering that it occurs. And he talks about at the end of this long period of his life, he got so discouraged that everything seemed so hopeless because everywhere he was sent or went, humans were just mistreating one another. And he felt no redemption. And he says, finally I came to the place where I was not sure that there was any value in humans at all. That our planet would be better if all humans were completely erased from the planet. But what he did not know is that those photos evoked a tremendous response of redemption from the hearts of thousands and thousands of people to respond to those tragedies, to those instances. And, people went, Doctors Without Borders are one of the people that went into many of those areas and established clinics and hospitals and were involved in the redemption process of these people. Another thing that's interesting that happened to him at the very end of this, when he was so full of despair, he and his wife went back to his hometown in northeastern Brazil, where he was born and raised. And he was born and raised on a 1,700-acre cattle farm that, when he was a child, was in the midst of a lush subtropical forest. And over the years, all of the trees had been removed, and it had become simply a wasteland. There was no streams, there was no water, there was no way for animals to even exist there. And he and his wife moved there, and they decided to try and redeem the land. And they started planting trees. And they talked about at the beginning, the trees wouldn't even grow, and hardly any of the trees would grow. But they kept working on it. And today it is this lush, subtropical, 1,700-acre preserve that's now a national park. And that's just happened in the last 15 years. And so God took this pain, this agony in his heart, and he transformed it into redemption of not only of the planet in the lives of the people, but in this little patch of the tropics in Amazon, in Brazil. So sometimes the vision that we have grows out of the pain of our heart. And the vision itself actually can be part of that healing process of things that have happened to us or that happened to other people. Another passage I want to take you to, I think is really important, is in the book of Matthew. And Jesus is talking, this is toward the end of his ministry, and he makes this statement about life and existence and redemption. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, to the sheep, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whenever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." There's God's vision statement. There's God's passion for redemption. So if you are walking through the world with a sense of that in your heart, then you see people that are in need. You see the hunger. You see the homeless. You see the people that need rescuing, because you have God's heart. And so not only, first of all, do you need to be available to God, but you need to have God's eyes on what is broken in this planet. You need to walk through this planet with a sense of what is around me, what is ruined. You need to see the woman that's asleep on the side of the road, not just walk by her. You need to see the homeless people that are living under the bridge, not just drive past them. I don't know what that means, but you need to have God's eyes. It's so easy to go through life and to think about all the things that entertain us and please us. It's nice to think about taking trips in the summer and going to Disneyland and going to the parks. And those are good things. They should be a part of your life, but they shouldn't be your whole life. It's nice to think about retirement and wanting to travel and see the world, but you know what? That shouldn't be your whole life. Your life was meant for something more than just pleasing yourself. Your life was meant for something more than just having a good time, having a good meal, enjoying yourself. Those are good, and that's fine for you to do that, but your life is worth more than that. If you have children, you need to raise them up with a sense that there's something more important than sports or video games or playing or entertaining themselves. That they are here for a purpose, that they're here for a reason. And I so appreciate, as I said earlier, what the youth group are doing to teach our kids that there are purposes out there for us. And a lot of you are involved in that, and I appreciate that. And that has been a part of our history in this church. I was thinking back, Betty Polly, some of you know her, and she was our treasurer for many, many years. And when she first started treasuring, she came to me one time, and she was so frustrated because our budget's always been just, like this. We've never, in a sense, where we didn't know what to do with money. It's usually we don't have enough money to do what we need to do. But there were many, many occasions throughout the years, and has been, where we saw this huge need. And I would talk to the elders and leadership, and I said, man, this is really horrible. We need to do something. And so just spontaneously on a Sunday morning, we'd say, you know what? This morning's offering, we're going to send it to Guatemala. There's a pastor there that needs a house. We're going to send the money down there. And Betty would just sort of pull her hair out. She'd go, we can't do that. We need the money. But she said, you know what? It kept happening and kept happening, and what I discovered is it didn't make any difference. God met our needs. We never had too much, but we always had things. She said, finally, I just relaxed, and I said, didn't worry about it. Pastors gave away the offering. Oh, well. God will make it up. But that's been the heart of this congregation, is to recognize, and that's what I so appreciate about you, is that a church, we've traveled the world. We've been on 5 continents with work teams. And many, many places, because our heart is in God's rescue mission. I've had numerous missionaries that have come to me and said, you know what, we've been all over this district. We've been to the biggest churches in this district. And this little church gave us a larger offering than any of those other churches. Churches of 500-600 people, we'd get $150. We'd come here, we'd get $1,500. Can we come back? And some of them email me and let me know they're planning to be on sabbatical next year because they want to come to our church. And what I want to say to you is that that's true of us, is true of you as well. God's not done with us. He's in the process of redeeming this planet, the people, everything about it. And we have the incredible privilege of being part of that. Let's don't waste our days. So the last question that perhaps you might ask is, well, how do I know when God speaks? How do I know it's his voice? If you come back next Sunday, we'll talk about that. Stand with me and let me bless you with a benediction. May God's exciting and amazing plan of redemption so grab your heart that you can hardly think of anything else. And may you be blessed with the understanding of not only when you were born, but why you were born. Amen.